Leslie, thanks for being with us for a few minutes. Could you share a bit about the two Ouch courses and what people have told you about how they impact their personal lives and their workplaces?
Sure, Joel, thank you. Ouch, That Stereotype Hurts is the course that most people are familiar with. And that helps us recognize that we all have biases, we all stereotype others, often unintentionally, yet there's an impact when we stereotype. So it helps us explore ways to interrupt and speak up and communicate about stereotypes or other bias statements without blame or shame. So it's a skill building course. And Ouch, Your Silence Hurts focuses more specifically on the passive bystander and the pivotal role that person can have if they choose to move from passively watching to actively using their voice. And it explores their power as bystanders and ways to speak up as an ally. So they go hand in hand. Usually the first one is Ouch, That Stereotype Hurts.
Thank you. And when you say without blame or shame, that seems very, very important, isn't it? To be able to speak up. And what have you heard from people who have started to use the Ouch techniques?
That they actually do use the Ouch techniques. And that is wonderful for training. These are actionable skills. They help us align our everyday behaviors with our larger goals or commitments towards treating others with respect. And because it's done in a way, there are lots of different ways you can speak up with compassion and effectively, because it's doable and done without blaming or embarrassing. People are willing to speak up when they might have otherwise stayed silent when they encounter stereotypes or other demeaning comments or behaviors that they'd want to say something about, but were hesitant. So it helps move people towards action and effective, compassionate action.
Yeah, thank you. I think in some of my research, some of my other courses, I worked with Dr. Daryl Wing Su, and he said from his research, the most common reason why people do not speak up is they do not know what to say, and they don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
And so these Ouch techniques, go ahead.
Or make things worse.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
And so the Ouch techniques, you would recommend that they be practiced and memorized, or how do you actually implement them?
Well, there are 6 that are introduced in Ouch, That Stereotype Hurts. We practice them in the training, whether that is facilitator-led or online learning. We practice them, and then we choose the ones that work for you in the moment. So you can speak up at that moment, you can speak up later, you can do so privately or in public on your own or with the help of an ally, but it allows us to actually use our voice when we choose to. It is a choice to speak up. It's also a choice to stay silent. I hear people say, well, I heard that, it really bothered me, or I saw that bullying, that really bothered me, but I decided to do nothing. And my response is, what does that mean? You stayed silent? I said, that is doing something. That is an act of silence. And it is a choice to stay silent. So this allows us to make a choice to speak up.
That's a great point. And I know that all of us have regrets about times we've not spoken up.
Oh, and yes, we do.
So to be able to say something. And can you give me an example of 1 or 2 of the techniques?
So one that many people find as an easy approach is simply to ask a respectful question, such as, I'm sorry, what did you say? I didn't understand, or what do you mean? Or can you help me understand? What did you say? Just a basic question like that. Or it can be a more complex question like, it sounds to me like you're saying that only people who are a certain age could do this. Is that what you mean? So that's a more complex question, but you could just say, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm. Right. Open-ended, neutral is the goal to start a conversation, perhaps.
Yes, this is not about snarky. This is about respect.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so on the bigger, when you work with clients, and I know you've worked with clients for years and years, how do you suggest as a training, how do you suggest they position the ouch training in their training world? Communication, DEI, what do you suggest?
Well, it depends on what your needs are. So for many organizations, this is part of a journey towards inclusion and creating a place where people have a sense of belonging. So this may be just the first step that people take to understand how I, as an individual, can use my voice to speak up to create inclusion in the workplace or beyond. We can use these with our families, with our family or friends, or anywhere else that we would like. So it may be the first step. And often an organization has already laid the foundation for diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. And they say, we know what it is, we're committed to this, but what does that mean? What am I supposed to do? And so they use ouch as a bridge from knowledge to using their own choices, their voice, their behaviors, their decisions to making a difference in the workplace. So it's a bridge from knowledge to action. That's the way that the ouch courses are used most of the time, but really I have to say at its core, both ouch programs, and particularly ouch, that stereotype hurts, are communication courses. So it is about effectively communicating in ways that are respectful and inclusive. You've communicated, I'm sure, with individuals who throw out a lot of stereotypes or biased statements or unfair, demeaning comments. And it is often an obstacle to communication because we get all that static in our head. We stop listening and we're thinking, did I understand that? What does that mean? And so there's actually an element of effective communication here. And that at its core is what ouch, that stereotype hurts is all about. It goes a step further to say, how do we use effective communication in order to address stereotypes and other biased statements? But it is also used as a communications course.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone knows men are good leaders.
Dumb blonde. What do you expect?
Very articulate for Puerto Rican.
What would he know? He's just a temp.
Hispanics.
You try to Jew me down. Mexicans are lazy.
You people all look alike.
You people are all alike.
You people are all alike.
Being part of the group is important to me.
He doesn't know where my family is from.
They hurt my feelings.
Because I didn't speak the language.
When I hear these jokes, I laugh. But inside, I'm really hurting.
The key is to assume good intent. And that's our first technique for speaking up. Some of the techniques will feel easier for you than others. Just choose the one or ones that are the most comfortable for you.
Is there something else that you often get asked that you would like to say or you think could be useful, Leslie?
Some people feel like this is too narrow an issue to focus on when there are such big, crushing issues in the world. Someone said that to me this way once in a training session. They said, you know, the jokes, the stereotypes, the demeaning and disparaging comments, I don't worry about that stuff. That's the little stuff. I'm more worried about the bigger issues, such as what happened on the news yesterday, for example. And so my thoughts about that, my response is that if you look at this as an either or choice, either I'm concerned about these little things, to use that word, these micro aggressions, these micro behaviors, or I'm interested in the macro issues, what is happening in our justice system, what is happening in our workplaces, what is happening in our healthcare. If you look at it as either or, well, then perhaps it makes sense to choose one or the other, but it really isn't either or. They are all connected. And so if you'd like, I will share with you some of the ways, there are many ways, but some of the ways that for me, the little things are connected and are part of the bigger issues, so that it's not an either or. It's much easier, actually, to address smaller behaviors and interrupt them when they're small and we can just chat about them than to wait until they're big deals and we have to have a big intervention. So if, Joel, that's of interest, I will chat with you about what I see the connections.
Please.
And I shouldn't say what I see, it's what the research shows as well.
Please, yes. I'm very interested in it.
So the first way that they are connected for me is just a personal response. I want to respond to this personally before I go into the research. Personally, they are connected in that I want to align my everyday behaviors with what I believe. And I do believe in fairness and equity and access to justice for everyone. And yet my everyday behaviors can support that or not. So if I am going to support inclusion as a lofty goal, then as an everyday behavior, I want to use my voice to speak up for inclusion. If I am going to support respect as a bigger goal, then when I have a chance to communicate in order to acknowledge and respect someone, then I will. And that's why I opened the book, the Stereotype Hurts book, with Gandhi's quote about we must be the change we wish to see in the world. That is how I personalize that change. I align my everyday behaviors in my small sphere of influence, wherever I can, with the larger issues that I believe are important. So that's the first reason, and it's a personal reason. But now let me jump over to the research. And I think Dr. Sue talks about this as well, about silent collusion. And silent collusion is when we see something and we could speak up, but instead we choose silence. And the impact of this is that others perceive you as agreeing. So I'll use bullying because it's an easy example. Not a simple example, but an example that I think is easy to see. The impact of silent collusion. So when you encounter stereotyping bias or bullying, for example, and you choose to stay silent, others usually perceive that as agreement. And when I say others, I mean everyone. The person who is bullying, when that person is bullying, looks around, no one speaks up, that person perceives support for me. People agree with me. The target of the bullying, some people use the word victim, I use the word target. The target of the bullying looks around, hears nothing, sees no one stepping forward to help, and feels alone. And the target perceives that no one is there who sides with them, who cares about them, or is there to support them. And what's often overlooked is the bystanders also perceive that because of the silence around them, that the other bystanders all agree with the bully, all support the bully. What the research shows is that multiple bystanders are silencing themselves when they want to speak up because they are perceiving the silence to mean I'm the only one here who is going to stand up for the victim, and it's too risky in this group because everyone else supports the bully. So silent collusion, going along with through silence, leads to a misperception, and then the bullying can continue unimpeded. So that's the second example. The first was personal. This one is silent collusion. And then there's another one, and I'm going to keep it simple, but we can go all the way from jokes to genocide with this if we wanted to. In other words, they're all connected from very small to very large. This is called stepping stones. And often the little things are the first step before the little bit bigger things, and the little bit bigger things, and the bigger things, and the very big things. So you can think about, I'm going to stay with the bullying, but this could just be, let me make it a workplace example. This could just be workplace teasing and harassment, right? So the first thing is the target. People are, someone or somebody or several people are name calling someone names, embarrassing that person. And then if it's not interrupted, maybe it moves to something bigger, like making jokes about the person or perhaps they are beginning to taunt the person or spread misinformation about the person. And if uninterrupted, then it gets bigger. Perhaps they begin to harass the person, both verbally and physically, or online, right? This can lead to others joining in or silently colluding, and that person can end up being isolated. These smaller things can lead to exclusion, and if not interrupted, they can lead to more. They can lead to turnover in the workplace. They can lead to physical abuse and larger. So the little things are connected to the big things. Now, does every joke turn into something huge, like a physical threat or worse? No. But you don't get to the physical threats or beyond exclusion, expulsion, extermination without having had a long history of demeaning and dehumanizing people first. So the little things, it's a slippery slope. The little things are connected. And last of all, it's just the right thing to do, to step in and treat others with respect. And like I said already, it's easier to address these things in the workplace when they're small. And we just say, hey, ouch, that really hurt. Did you know why? Let me tell you. And you talk about it together without making it a big deal.
And thank you for all of that, Leslie. And I know that even a small thing to say can be hard. We have to acknowledge that it is hard to speak up for many reasons. I think that the techniques, though, that you outline and have written about for so many years give us something to try, right? And we can practice.
So that's why there's something as easy as assume good intent and explain impact. I know you mean well when you say that. It really embarrasses me. Can I tell you why?
Yeah.
Right? Now, this doesn't ensure that the other person is going to be humane in their response, but most people are. Most people are like, oh, I didn't mean to embarrass you. And then you have an open conversation. So you're right. It's not, the techniques may be simple, like asking a question, what did you say? Or say, I don't know, maybe that applies to everyone. Simple techniques, but not simple to do, because it does feel uncomfortable for some people, lots of people.
Yeah.
Most people.
Yes.
But not everyone.
Well, me too. I mean, I've known since so many years, and it's still, there are moments that I just make that choice to stay silent, and I regret it. And
Yes.
I want to go back, you can always go back later, right? If
you can
do it in the moment.
You almost always can. Not always, but if that person is still available to you, you can always go back, and it still has a powerful effect to tell someone, look, something happened. This is what I meant. This is how it turned out. I feel terrible about it. I know I hurt you or harmed you. And I'm hoping after all this time, you'll accept my apology. So yes, we can still do that.
And one thing we haven't talked about is, what if I've said something?
So we're all going to be in that situation sometimes, right? Because we're all human and we don't know everything. And we're sooner or later going to, whether we intend it or not, going to say something that's unfair or harmful or stereotypical. And if someone gives you the feedback, I would consider that a gift, because they are giving you the gift of a second chance. They care enough about you to say, however they say it, might be sweet, it might be sarcastic, it might be some other way, but they care enough about the relationship to say, hey, there's an impact on me, and you have a chance to recover, which simply means to say, I hear you, I see, and I'm sorry. In its simplest form, that's what recovery is. So that's a gift. What's harder is if you or I or a person is constantly demeaning or discounting others, then others are less willing to give us feedback, right? And it's like, it's not going to help. That's how she is.
Or if I get defensive about feedback.
If you get defensive, yes, then it's going to be, well, like I said, But getting defensive doesn't help. Getting fighting back, punching harder, none of those things help. But simply just, even if all you can say is, I hear you, thank you for that, let me think about it. If that's all you can say, that's something. And then you do think about it. And if you're ready and you want to, you can go and further talk about it.
Yeah, that's how I see it also. It's like if you want to have a relationship with a colleague, you'll make that effort and you will fail. You may slip up, you may make mistakes, but it's about learning more and examining your own conditioning that led to you saying that.
And we're hoping people will give us feedback. Again, if we remain silent, we often remain silent thinking, I don't want to embarrass this person or harm this relationship. But Dr. Perlow's research on the spiral of silence shows that when we really are harmed by someone else's behavior or comment, and we withhold feedback because we don't want to make it worse or embarrass that person, or it's our boss or, our grandmother, and we don't want to embarrass that person, that we actually change the relationship by withholding feedback, because now we start to lessen our trust with the person because we're no longer being open and honest, and we're withdrawing from the person. So actually withholding feedback from someone that you're in a relationship, it does affect the relationship. It inserts a distance into the relationship that wasn't there before.
I think that's really important. So one thing that comes to mind, Leslie, is, some people will say that the issues that Ouch programs deal with are narrower issues. And well, they're working on the big inclusive culture issues. How do you respond to that?
So consider the workplace. We don't thrive in a workplace where people are demeaned, disrespected, discounted, disparaged. And those small things, as some people call them, cumulatively can have a major impact. But if you take it a step further, and if you are sued in a court of law, the jury may very well see these smaller behaviors, and I say smaller in quotation marks, these smaller microaggressions as indicators of larger behaviors that could also occur, and are indicators or signs of a potential hostile work environment. So it is not, from a legal point of view, separate, these smaller microaggressions and the larger cultural environment that you are creating.
My question is around assuming good intent.
Okay.
And when you've worked with clients, where do you help them? I mean, there are limits to this good intent that you can assume. Are there?
Well, tell me more what you mean by the question, John.
Well, I think what I'm talking about is, okay, so I assume good intent, and I know you meant well, and so at some point it becomes, I'm not sure you meant well because this is going on. How do you coach people on that?
Okay, so that is the most basic use of assume good intent and explain impact. You assume, I know you meant well, or I know you didn't mean to undermine our group, or I know you meant no harm. The impact, however, was this, right? That's the most simple. I know you meant that to be funny, but that joke hurt. All right, that's the most simple. So what if you don't know the person's intent? Well, the word of caution is don't assume, because if you jump to judgment about this person, you are in fact modeling some of the same behaviors you would not want addressed or directed at you. You do not want someone looking at you and assuming based upon anything that's already in their head who you are, what your brain is, or what your intent is. So there are many ways to use assume good intent. So for example, let's say you have someone that you're not sure they really didn't mean to harm you, but surely they had some good intent. Maybe it was a team leader, and that team leader really wants you to be, as a team, successful. Then what about that? I know you want our team to be successful. Did you realize that what happened in the staff meeting just now is causing our team to fracture? Can I explain what I mean? Okay. So that's another example, right? Doesn't mean you meant well. It means that somewhere in there you have a good intent. The purpose of doing this is that it is blame-free. And by you not blaming the other person, you are allowing an open conversation. If you blame the other person, even if you don't say it out loud, if you've already chosen blame in your mind, it's in your voice, it's in your face, it's leaking out. So if you can put yourself in the position of saying, I am going to assume that you have some good intent here, then you are going to be non-judgmental and you're more likely to be successful. So it will help you and it will help the other person.
Thank you for that. That's really strategic to find where that good intention may be. It may not be personally because they said something that hurt someone in the meeting or even me, but to find that their good intention might be for the team or for the project we're on or whatever. So it's opening a door.
It's a non-blaming, non-shaming way to bring up something that is difficult, or to bring up something that perhaps the other person didn't mean. Perhaps, because we don't know. We don't know. And if at any time it just feels too risky, particularly if it's a repeated behavior by the other person, we can always find an ally, maybe a friend of that person or a person at the same level in the organization who is willing to address the person. Because, you know, we do take risk, but there are some risks we prefer not to take. We're just not comfortable, but we can still use our voice by finding an ally to help us.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you, Leslie. Congratulations on the work that I believe has really touched hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, and thousands of organizations have used this book and videos and e-learning courses. So thank you for writing it originally. Thank you for including me in the journey. And
oh, wow.
And
couldn't have done it without you, Joel. Could not have taken this small book and made it into something that reached a larger audience. And it's still has been and is still a pleasure to partner with you.
Thank you. Same back at you. And
isn't
it incredible that this, you know, what is it? It's about a 12-minute video. It's a 20 or 30-minute e-learning experience. And it really gives people, and I've seen it firsthand even a week ago, there's something I can practice. I can do something and not regret like I have in the past. It's really a huge gift, I think.
That's the number one feedback that we receive, is that it was actionable for me and I used it. And I might have used it at work. I might have used it out in the community. I might have used it at home, but I used it. And often people will say, and I felt like I was doing what I had been wanting to do and was unable, and now I'm able.
Thank you. With that, thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Joel.